right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order, and we'd like to recognize those that are in the audience with us tonight. Thank you. Jason, would you please do the school board norms?
The board developed norms are: decisions will be based on the board's strategic plan, its mission, and what's best for students. The board will act as stewards of tax dollars. Board members will complete foundation work to be prepared for meetings. Meetings will be efficient. All perspectives will be voiced and heard, and all board members will maintain a professional decorum.
Thank you. Nothing under public communication. Is there any conflicts of interest to declare? Okay, moving on. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Roger and a second by Bob. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving into our regular meeting, we have nothing under recognition, but we do have something under correspondence. Dr. Leck, if you want to just give us a few notes about that.
Sure. Recently, we hosted Education Standards and Practices Board. Recently, we hosted ESPB, the Education Standards and Practices Board, here for content standards review, and then also their meeting. They held that meeting here, and this is just a letter thanking the district for hosting those events. And in particular, I know in visiting with Dr. Pitkin, who is the executive director, she wanted me to also make sure to publicly thank Amy Newstall, who did an awful lot of work for that meeting, a lot of work coordinating and making sure that everybody was comfortable. So just wanted to make sure that we recognize Amy and just wanted to share this correspondence that came just thanking the district for the use of space.
And we do appreciate ESPB letting us know that it was a good environment, and we invite them back again. Moving on to reports. I'm going to go ahead and provide a health insurance report to you guys. So wanted to let you know at the end of the year, the fund did experience a loss this year. However, the balance did not go underneath that 4-month threshold that would require an additional influx of money per the negotiated agreement. To work on these rising healthcare costs, the consultants, Hayes, recommended making some plan changes to the Health Insurance Committee. The committee that governs the insurance made the following changes. The deductible for individuals was changed from $250 to $500, for families from $500 to $1,000, and additionally there were some increases to member premiums. For a single employee, it was increased by $4.96, and I believe that's each pay period. 9 months, yep. For 9 months, yep. And then the employee plus children was increased by $8.74, and the family premium was increased by $14.40. Additionally, the Medallis Clinic is providing savings to the health insurance. Right now, they're showing a 27% savings happening because of Medallis. It's a net dollar savings of $30,864 for the first year. But Hayes did let us know that it's not a true it's not a true savings, because how something is coded when you go to the emergency room for a high fever. If you now go to the urgent care for that high fever, it's coded different, and so they can't, it's apples to oranges, if you will, but at a minimum, it's over $30,000 in savings. And then lastly, they did add chiropractic services, which has been popular. So anyway, any questions on the health insurance report? Yes, Jason.
Was there any kind of insight from Hayes as to the financial impact the raise in premiums and the raise in deductibles would have? I mean, is there a number that they kind of shared?
It was, they had different options available for the Health Insurance Committee to review, and each option provided a percentage of increase in revenue, and these changes that they did were agreeable to the consultants to think they would be at the right spot. But to be seen. Any other questions? And Bob, did I miss anything? Because you're also on that committee with me.
maybe just point out that from year to year, it's really difficult to predict what the expenses are going to be when you're self-funded. So this year the usage was a little heavier. Maybe next year the usage will be a little lighter, and so you don't know. So.
Anything else? Okay, moving on to the superintendent's report, Dr. Leck.
So thank you. I do have the written report that you have. Just wanted to remind all of our board members that along with administrators, you traditionally serve breakfast for our teacher in service. That is this Wednesday. So arrival between 7 and 7:15 would be optimum to help get everything organized and planned and ready to roll for our teachers and staff that come for that breakfast. You're certainly always welcome to stay for as much of that as you feel is pertinent. The superintendent's address follows that breakfast. You're certainly welcome, again, to be a part of that. So for my focus for that will be a big push for collaboration. We are instituting professional learning communities, so we wanted to ensure that we really reinforce the importance of collaboration, professional collaboration. The strategic plan and, of course, facility planning are all major topics in that superintendent address. I wanted to draw your attention to the agenda for the Governor's Summit on Innovative Education. As I'm sure the board is aware, we did host that this year. We were selected by the Governor's office to host that event, one of 3 schools that have done that, which we're really quite proud of that we were selected. I think it says a lot about our district, a lot about our teachers, that we were selected to host this event. For those that had a chance to come, it really was a great experience. It was a well-attended conference, 450 to 500, somewhere around there registered. But a well-attended, a very, very well-organized conference that focused on innovation in the classroom, instructional innovation, but then also, the challenges of behavioral health and how we can work and how the state is working to overcome some of those challenges. So very, very pertinent topics that were addressed at the conference. And having been able to go to both days, it was a very, very good conference. The governor's office did a great job of getting really good speakers that spoke to the needs, spoke articulately, provided some good impactful information for all the participants, and I do know that they recorded all of the sessions. They're going to break them down, so the welcome that I did, the governor's speech, Luke Anderson's presentation on relationship mapping, Mr. Gaylor's presentation on cultivating leadership at the building level, all of those will be accessible individually, and so you don't have to search through a long 8-hour presentation. They'll all be done individually. And I'll tell you, it was really great to hear the governor in the media and the news throughout the conference referencing things that our educators were saying, from relationship mapping to, cultivating leadership, just leadership lessons in general. And the governor continued to reference the things that he heard from our Jamestown speakers. So I thought that was really something that really struck me, and very appreciative of that, but I think it validates a lot of what is happening here and a lot of what our leaders and our teachers are doing every day. So again, I think that's really a feather in our cap to be hosting an event like that, and I think it went very, very well. I did include the links to the 3 different presentations or time that Jamestown folks were in front of that crowd, and so you can look at those, and if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer any there. And I know some other members were able to go, board members. I don't know if you have comments or anything to share.
Diane?
Yes, I was not able to attend the entire sessions, and I think some school board members attended longer than I did, but I spent about 2 to 3 hours each day. It was a 2-day event, and I have to tell you that I felt privileged to be there. It was outstanding, and I think we should be very proud, as Dr. Lex said, that we hosted and that 2 of our own were speakers. They had some absolutely fantastic speakers, and I really got a lot out of it. I wish I could have stayed longer, so I'm looking forward to next year's.
Do you have anything to add? Heidi?
And just add to what both of you said, incredibly proud to have two of our own up there speaking. And did a very, very nice job, as well as having their messages referenced, as Dr. Leck said, throughout the 2 days. And I'm thankful that we were able to have it here in Jamestown. I also appreciate the teachers that took the time. I know some of them weren't able to make it because there were some new teacher orientations and different things that had previously been scheduled, but I appreciate that our teachers and staff that took the time to attend the sessions. And it was really neat to see our gymnasium. They had lights from above, music, and even the podium had a kind of a starry look to it. I was hoping they might leave some of those lights, but I don't think that happened. But I actually walked into the gym and just went, wow. It was actually pretty impressive look to it. So, and the others that were there can attest to that as well. So thank you, and thank you, Dr. Leck, for your work also in getting this here and having us be part of it and host it.
Yeah, I would have to agree with everything that the two have said, that it was phenomenal just to walk into the gym, and it didn't look like our championship basketball court. It looked like this fancy place to come learn something. And all of the messages were really wonderful, but what was really fantastic was when Dr. Leck, Mr. Anderson, and Mr. Gaylor got up, and all I could think of is, they're ours. They're a part of our district. You know, sometimes when you listen to speakers, you're like, oh, how do we get them here? They're ours. They're here. And so it was really great to listen. So, and Mr. Anderson's presentation we have heard here at the board. Mr. Gaylor's would be new, so when that video link comes, I strongly encourage you to listen and just watch it. It's not very long, but he did a wonderful job of tying everything that he knows into leadership and how he's cultivating that in one of our buildings. So it's great.
Thank you. A nice segue into some of the back-to-school in-servicing stuff. I wanted to provide information related to, as Heidi said, some of our new teachers and other staff weren't able to participate because they were mentoring new staff or in the middle of the onboarding process. And I know Mr. Hagelin does an awful lot of work with preparing our teachers and our new staff in just the in-service agenda in general. So I certainly want to recognize him for all that work. But I just wanted to share with the board a lot of the work that we do to onboard our new staff, to mentor our new staff, to mentor our new administrators. So that happens internally with internal mentors, but they also, our teachers new to the profession get external mentoring, external training through the mentoring program, and then they get supported through those those trained mentors who serve as our mentors also. And so that's an important peer resource that we have, and I just want to bring your attention to it. And then of course we also have I shared the back to school school in-service agenda, so you can just get a chance to see what it is that we do in these in-service days. We pack a lot of different training and time into those 3 days. We pack a lot of stuff in, and we think it's important, and we certainly see the need to continue to use that time wisely, but just wanted to share that. Later on in the agenda, you'll have a couple different updates and requests and action items. Food service update. The USDA does monitor minimum increases, and they do that to provide equity, to make sure that everybody is held to a similar standard. And one of the areas that they came back and said we need to make an increase is to adult lunch prices to meet that minimum. So that's where that action comes from, and that is coming directly from Shelley Mack, our food service director. You do have a Jamestown Parks and Recreation request coming later to consider supporting a seating upgrade at Jack Brown Stadium. One of the things that I want you to be aware and just remember, two things. The first is that a few years ago we did do a dugout upgrade. We participated in that. The second thing that I think is important to remember is we aren't charged to utilize that facility, and really how we support the use of the facility, like other entities that use that, is to consider supporting as these upgrades come along. I will say this is a tough time for us financially to make a commitment. And I think it's one of those things that we need to strongly consider because they are wonderful partners, the Jamestown Parks and Rec. We just have to look to see if that's the right decision. And I certainly would recommend potentially postponing that for a period of time to get a better picture of where we're at financially and what we can support through our building fund. I'm not sure if right now we have all the information we need to make that decision. Last couple of items, we do have you'll have in your agenda an updated agreement for our ITV consortium. They need approval for it. It is pretty simple language changes that just reference the operation as a 501c3 organization. So that's the only change in that agreement. I recommend approval there. One of the benefits of having self-funded health insurance, President Schmidt talked about that earlier, gave a report on that. We also have an opportunity, health and wellness, for our staff can come in and at no cost do a biomedical screening. I participated in that. It was 20 minutes. I got great information, and it's really just supporting our staff to be as healthy and as well as they can be. And a great opportunity, good screening we had. How many people participate? Do you know? About 30? Somewhere around there?
20, I think 27.
Okay. That we're able to take advantage of that. Our new staff, they'll have that opportunity to do that later on in the year because they technically weren't on the insurance plan yet. So just pointing out another benefit of being self-funded. We were able to do those things. The last thing I wanted to touch on, outside of meeting corrections, which again you've looked at, we just had a correction for a date. The referendum, we're still continuing to try to get out information the best that we can, really targeting open houses. I put out what I'm calling a referendum quick hitter. Kind of gives the basics of the need, what we're talking about doing, when you could, when the referendum will be voted upon. We're going to again try to utilize the UJ Block Party as a way to get out and talk to people that may not get the quick hitter or see that information. We'll work with the media again. Let's talk about it, the Wayne Byers Show, those kinds of opportunities that we want to use to, again, just try to get that information out the best that we can. We're still working on hiring election workers, so if you happen to know anybody that could serve in that capacity, have them contact the central office. And if any board members want to share some time with me in the booth at the UJ booth at the community event, the block party, just let me know and I'll be happy to find some time for you to do that. But with that, I would stand for questions if you have any.
Any questions on Dr. Leck's report? Roger.
I just have one for him. Under the Governor's Summit, those presentations and so on, would that be available to any public that would be looking for it?
Good question. Yes, well, they'll be segmented out, like all of those different sessions. They'll all be segmented out in just to that topic. And then so 15 minutes. And you could watch just that 15 minutes with Mr. Gaylor or Mr. Anderson, or you could watch the 45 minutes of Governor Burgum on day one, kind of giving the initial keynote. And they'll all be segmented out and available. I'm not sure how the governor's office disseminates those. I'm guessing through social media. But they'll be available, and I will certainly share them as soon as I get them.
Heidi.
Just a question on the Park and Rec's request. Being a community our size, I think partnerships are important, and I think we can all benefit each other. So I think that this is something that should be taken into serious consideration. But I do agree that timing right now, just even a few more months now after the referendum, might be better to revisit. Will we bring that back as an agenda item then, like in October, November, after the referendum vote?
We can go ahead and discuss that as an action item later in the report or in the agenda. But we can definitely bring that forward.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions of Dr. Leck for his report? Oh, Jason.
In regards to the referendum, are we feeling overwhelmed with anything? The process, the logistics, is there anything? I just want to make sure we're not overtaxing some of our staff getting things going and like the logistics of the votes where they'll be, that kind of stuff.
I think the easy answer is yes. It's overwhelming to do. We haven't taken on this challenge in the past, and those that, those in central office, Amy, Sally, others that are helping out, certainly see heavily increased workload to accommodate for the planning for the workers, finding workers, getting space organized, absentee ballots, all of those types of things. Those aren't anything that we've done in the past. So it absolutely puts a workload burden on the staff that we have internally, but I can say they're doing a great job, and we will certainly be ready to go. But it is more work.
How many workers do we need? Do we need to recruit?
Amy has been doing a phenomenal job. I had to be out, and she is, there is one more person that I have, but we do need more workers.
Do you have a rough estimate of how many you need? And is there a qualification?
Yeah, being available that day. We do a training, there's a PowerPoint that the county has given us. We're using the county is allowing us to use the voting booths. It'll be held right here in Thompson. And so both Amy and I are educating ourselves. There's still things that we want to review so that we are doing everything to protocol. So we will make it happen.
Really, it's one of those things, it's a learning experience. We haven't had to do this, but I will say that school districts across the state hold these elections. We have been fortunate as a community that the county has done has provided that in the past. And so it's a little bit different for us because we're doing it for the first time. But yeah, it's been a learning experience. A lot of people have, how many? About 10?
About 10.
About 10. 10 is what yeah, again, a learning experience. We're certainly up to the challenge.
All right, thank you. Any other? Oh, Melissa.
I was just wondering if we'd heard back from Officer Statska as to availability for officers that day to just ensure the safety of our students while they're in the building, since it will be open to the public.
No.
So it's something that we're still working on. They're aware of the election and what, there's some other challenges with just making sure that we get the coverage, and we want to ensure that we have the right number of people to provide the coverage.
Diane?
Am I correct in assuming that school board members could not serve as election?
Correct.
Okay. I figured. Oh, well.
All right, very good. Well, thank you, Dr. Leck. And we'll go ahead and move on then to letter D, which is board education. Number 1 there, contextual competency, educators' code of conduct. Dr. Leck?
Thank you. I'll be brief. Just wanted to make sure, just like any other profession, the profession of education in North Dakota, or the profession of education has codes of conduct. The expectations, codes of conduct are similar across different, the idea of them are similar across lots of different professions. It's simply the standard to which we hold ourselves. And in North Dakota, we have a code of conduct that is outlined by North Dakota Century Code and governed, managed through ESPB, the Education Standards and Practices Board. We've been pretty fortunate in Jamestown that we've had a number of Jamestown staff and board members serve on the ESPB. Greg Allen served on ESPB, serving as president for a period of time. Bob Toso serves currently as a member on the ESPB board. I know Dan Van Onen has served on the ESPB, and I'm sure that there are others that I'm missing. But the ESPB board is made up of different stakeholders: administrators, school board members, teachers represented on the Education Standards Board. So one of the things that they consider is that professional code of conduct. And I've just provided it for information, just so you know that it's there, that it is the standard to which educators in our state are held to. It has 3 different, outside of the introduction that you get in the preamble, there are 3 different principles: the commitment to the student, the commitment to the profession, and the commitment to the community, all important aspects of what we do in education. I think it touches on all of those, that the the code of conduct was put in place in 1995, and it was revised again in 2002. And so it is looked at, and the general authority for it is North Dakota Century Code, and you can see the code that are listed within that link as well. But I'd be happy to answer questions. I really just wanted to provide it as information that you, as board members, are aware of what standard professionally our teachers hold themselves to.
Any questions for Dr. Leck? Okay, thank you. Moving on to letter E, strategic plan goal review. Number 1, goal 1, literacy lens audit report recommendations from Mr. Haglund. Good evening.
Oh, well, to keep myself on track, I put together a PowerPoint, and as soon as we get powered up, we'll get started.
And Mr. Haglund, they have a link it's linked as report in your agenda.
Okay, so basically what I want to do is go through the literacy lens audit report recommendations. The literacy lens audit that took place last fall, and we received the report in January of last year. This is part of our Striving Readers grant application, our process there. There were 7 recommendations that came through the literacy lens report, and they're listed there, and you can see them. What I've done is just take each one of them and talk about what we've done to this point and what's happening in the near future here. Recommendation number 1 talked about developing a detailed, well-communicated literacy framework. Okay. And on March 25th, we had Dr. Kimberly Tyson from Solution Tree come in and work with our principals, teachers, and instructional coaches. And that was a literacy framework work group that we formed. She went over a number of different things on a comprehensive literacy framework that includes reading, oral language, and writing. After we had that workshop, that training with Dr. Tyson, we sent out a survey to teachers about their current practices, some of the things that they're currently doing along those lines. And then to follow up with that, on April 24th, that work group met and created a draft of the a comprehensive literacy framework. That draft is that document, and again, you have a copy of that. But basically, it just goes through and talks about the different components of a comprehensive literacy framework, and again, the reading, the oral language, and the writing. So we worked on that. Some clarification on one of the big pieces is common vocabulary, common language, and getting an understanding of what guided reading is at the elementary, what read alouds are. Just a lot of things that we just need to clarify with staff and set those expectations. So on Wednesday at our back to school sessions, after Dr. Leck is done with his presentation, they get to listen to me, which I'm sure will be a highlight for everyone. And I'll go through just some of the basics of the literacy framework. Then we are following up that, and that just sort of sets the expectations from the district level. After that, our principals are putting together, we're dividing up into 2 groups, and the elementary principals are putting together a presentation. The secondary principals are doing the same thing, where they're talking about the connection between the work we've been doing with Marzano and that evaluation system and that growth model, our IAL, which is our improving academic literacy process, and the literacy framework itself, and how they are all tied together. It's not separate issues, and they're not separate things happening, but they are all connected and working towards the same end. And then so they'll be talking about that connection of what they will be looking for in classrooms, what some of their expectations are for teacher strategies and so forth that are used. And then the last piece of that is our instructional coaches, again, at the elementary and secondary level, will be broken up into those two groups. And they'll be talking about literacy strategies and support for teachers. And they'll take it more from the standpoint of, okay, you've heard what the district expectations are, you've heard what your principals are going to be looking for. These are the things that we're going to help you with as instructional coaches, give you the professional development to make sure you understand those different strategies, and then how we can support you in the classroom for implementing those strategies. So that's the focus of our Wednesday morning breakout sessions. So that covers what we've done to this point with the literacy framework, recommendation number 1. Number 2, talked about creating a guaranteed and viable curriculum in reading, English language arts instruction. We've been working on standards-based instruction for quite a while, looking at prioritizing state standards. We'll continue with that work. Last year, for our early out at the high school, we did a lot of work. We broke up into groups, secondary and elementary, and worked on identifying those priority standards, and then identifying guaranteed vocabulary in each content area. The secondary, we're able to do all 4 primary content areas: math, science, social studies, and language arts. Elementary focused on the math piece of it, because we had just implemented a new math series the year before and wanted to reinforce that and build on that. And then the last part of that day was working on proficiency scales. How do you decide how students are doing when you identify those target areas and those prioritized state standards? How do you make decisions about how students are performing and building some proficiency scales for that? All of those were guided by some webinars that were done by Phil Warwick from Marzano Research. Phil has been in the state a number of times and is working with the REAs across the state to support the process for standards-based instruction and strengthening classroom instruction. Okay. The next step for that will be our PLCs. As Dr. Leck mentioned, we'll be implementing that PLC process. We've had that at varying degrees and varying styles throughout the district for a number of years. One of the things that was a benefit of our Striving Readers grant was that we were able to work that into the grant as part of the recommendations from Literacy Lens Audit. So we'll be continuing with that. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. So the third recommendation was just establishing those professional learning communities in each of the buildings. Last year, we started by bringing in Jimmy Varga, a consultant with Solution Tree. He came in and worked with the building principals on April 16th for a day, just going through an overview of the why and the what about learning about professional learning communities. Then this summer, we were able to send 19 participants to the PLC Institute, which was held in Minneapolis, again hosted by Solution Tree. It was a 3-day event that we heard just great things about when they got back. There were a number of breakout sessions. We had principal and lead teacher and instructional coach from each of the buildings attend that, and then they decided as a team which sessions they were going to, and we followed up with that with a meeting talking about the things that they had come away from that with, the information that they had gained, but also where do we move from there. And again, that will be followed up with tomorrow, August 20th. Bob Carter and David Pilar from Solution Tree, 2 Solution Tree consultants. We'll be in town to work with all of our elementary and secondary staff. We're going to divide the group up into elementary and secondary. Bob will work with our our elementary staff. David will work with our secondary staff. And they'll just give a background overview of PLCs and some of the things that our teachers can look forward to, some of the questions that they will have, some of the things to work through that. The nicest part of having Bob and David come in as consultants is that they're both current principals. They're practitioners. They're not people that just go around talking about, about the subject. They actually live it. They have been trained, but they have had a lot of experience implementing the PLCs across their own schools and districts. So that was recommendation number 3. That's where we're at with that. Recommendation 4 dealt with sustaining a viable instructional literacy coaching model. Again, because of this Driving Mirrors grant, we were able to hire 2 additional instructional coaches this spring. We hired one at the elementary and one at the secondary, so now we have 1 high school instructional coach, 1 middle school instructional coach, and 3 elementary coaches. 2 of those coaches have a big school and a small school, Gusner and Louis L'Amour, Lincoln and Washington, and then the newest of our elementary instructional coaches just has the 1 building, and that's Jada Anderson, and she's a teacher that came out of Roosevelt, so she's familiar with that setting. We felt that would be the best place for her to begin this and feel the most comfortable. So with the addition of those positions, we have changes in roles. With the ability to have more instructional coaches, we're moving to a model where now those instructional coaches, they used to meet with me, and we sort of I directed with them what was going on with a lot of different areas, everything from assessments to curriculum issues to interventions, the MTSS model, all those types of things. And now we're trying to make that transition to where they'll still have that district leadership. I'll still be meeting with them. We'll work together, but now we'll be bringing them in along with our principals to work at the different levels. So when we have once a month when I have my elementary or secondary principal meetings, instructional coaches will join us for a portion of that meeting so we can talk as a group about what's happening and sort of trying to model that PLC process with the coaches and the principals. So, and again, we continue to work with Solution Tree. Mandan has brought in a consultant to work specifically with their instructional coaches. We've gotten some resources from them, some help from them, and they've been very good about offering to collaborate on some activities and stuff. So we're looking forward to doing that. Recommendation number 5 talks about enriching classroom and school literacy environments. The first step in that whole process, and that goes for 5 and for 6. 6 deals with the same thing. It's examining literacy access across the district. Our first step is just identifying and organizing our current resources. Just as we did with when we moved to the new assessment model, we first had to look at what we were currently using and decide, okay, this is something we're going to maintain, this is something we can get rid of. That's one of the things that schools really struggle with is making decisions to not do something. We always hear about adding things to the plate, but very seldom hear about, well, we don't need to do that anymore. And that's some of the things we're looking at here is what are some current things that we have that maybe we can organize better and do a better job with. And quite honestly, this is not, we are just beginning to work on these last couple recommendations. And recommendation 7 was the comprehensive professional development and balanced literacy. Again, this goes back to the work that the literacy framework and the work that we did with Dr. Tyson, the work we're going to do at the back to school sessions. And, I think the neatest part about this is that when we go to our sessions on Wednesday, that principals will have a leadership role in the professional development activities that day. We've had teachers do some of those things. We have had sharing sessions and stuff. But we're actually having principals take some of that role on, and it's pretty exciting because it's something that we have been working on and wanted to do more of. So we hope to build on that. So that's everything that I have at this point, and thank you. And if you have any questions,
Thank you.
Try to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Hagelin, for that very thorough report. Any questions or comments for Mr. Hagelin? Jason?
I guess just one question. The PLC Institute, will those folks that attended now be leaders within the district? I mean, I'm assuming we're going to structure those in a way that we utilize what they experienced at the Institute?
Right. When we went, one of the things that we decided right away when we were looking at sending people to the PLC Institute, again, because of the Striving Readers grant, we were able to do that. Cost of that is quite high, and we just wouldn't have been able. Sally wouldn't let me send anybody. But anyway, but one of the things we talked about at that point is that the PLC process is really a building level process, and there has to be, building principals are critical, and they make or break any initiative that you have in a school. But with the PLC process, their leadership is essential. And so we asked them to identify staff member to go with, so that we had that perspective of teacher as well as principal. And the understanding was that a teacher couldn't go unless the principal went. So if they weren't able or willing to go, then nobody from their school would be going either, because their leadership is essential. So all of our principals went. The teachers that went with that, we had shared with them the fact that when they come back, then their job is to support and work with the building principal to see that initiative and that process gets implemented within their building. So when we have that leadership team now, there's some expectations from the district level, but really it comes down to building level implementation. So when we have, and more so probably at our principal meetings with elementary and secondary, when we have those meetings, we'll be sharing updates about what is happening with the process, some of the things that we have some expectations for how things are reported and those types of things. But the teacher leader that went with is there to support and give that teacher perspective to the principal.
And I appreciate, this really goes into that professional development, those PLCs, and then even the mentorship that we're doing with the new teachers. This is just cultivating that within our area, because we're not only here for our students, but we're also here for our teachers to make sure they have the best place to work. And I think this is going to be good. I appreciate that you're doing a review, an inventory, if you will, of what we currently have, because maybe what we have works. Just because it's new and shiny doesn't mean that that's what's going to be best for our students and our teachers, so I do appreciate that. Dr. Leck, you had a comment?
I do, just a few comments. The first, that, and Mr. Hagelin mentioned this already, but I think it's important to reinforce that everything in this goal area is all funded by the Striving Readers Grant. So, there is a lot of stuff that, a lot of different initiatives that Mr. Hagelin talked about, and I just wanted to reinforce that that's something that's covered through the grant. And we're certainly fortunate to be able to do that, because we might not be able to, at least not to the degree that we are, without that. And I also wanted to point out, this is the first of the strategic plan goal reviews, and we'll do this similar to how we've done board education, where every year each of these goal areas in different meetings, we've got that schedule, and we've seen that already. But so you can plot out exactly, we want to make sure that this is a living document, something that we're reporting on. And so not just the board, but anybody that's listening and the public can understand exactly what it is that we're looking to do. So what are we doing now? Where are we future focused towards? And how are we getting there? So that's an important piece of that as well, and is to review those in a fairly comprehensive way, so we make sure that, that's number one, that it's an important goal and that we understand how we're getting there. The last thing I wanted to mention is just to maybe give a little PLC primer for those that maybe hear that acronym and wonder what professional learning communities are, what PLCs mean. And the simplest way that I can probably structure it is it focuses around 4 very simple corollary questions. What do we expect kids to know? Or what do we want them to know? How do we know where they are? So how are we making that assessment? What do we do if they aren't there? So what's the interventions in place to help a child that isn't at proficiency get there? And then what do we do if they already know it? So if they're already at that standard, then what do we do? So PLCs are centered around those 4 questions. You're answering those 4 questions in all of your units. What do we expect kids to know in this unit? How do we know if they know it? How are we assessing them, and what are we doing to make sure that we know as teachers and administrators, mostly teachers? But what do we do if they don't know it? How are we intervening? And then, again, what do we do if they already know it? So how are we enriching that experience for those? So that's just kind of the primer I wanted to give with PLCs.
Any other questions for Mr. Haglund? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to letter F, old business. Can I have a motion to create a strategic plan review committee and thus appointing 3 board members? And I do believe with this strategic plan committee, it should be the president, the vice president, and then 1 member from the strategic planning committee. So
You're just appointing.
Oh, and I'm appointing that, but that's who I think should be on it. Oh, I don't need a motion?
Your action is you're appointing.
Oh, sorry. I knew I'd have something that I'd fumble. Anyway, so I'm appointing myself and Heidi Larson and Steve Veldkamp to the strategic plan review committee going forward. That's it. Okay, so moving on to then letter 2, the approval of the board member committee appointments. Can I have a motion? Roger, and then seconded by Bob. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to new business, under activities, we have the request from the Jamestown Park and Rec, which we did receive some information from Dr. Leck on that during his report. And as we've mentioned, this is a very good partnership for us in our community, and they allow us to use the facility at no charge. So I would say that this is not a no, it's just not a right now. So I would like to motion that we postpone any action on this until October 21st.
You're requesting.
I'm requesting a motion. Heidi motion, and then Greg seconds. Any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to number 2, building and grounds, referendum update. Dr. Leck?
And so I provided that quick hitter here, in my report, I talked about that, some of the things that we're doing to help to communicate, and if there's any ways, of course, if there's any questions from the community, those that are watching this meeting, I'm always happy to hold a conversation, whether that's face-to-face in my office, a phone call, email, however we can communicate or get that information out to people. We certainly want to be able to do that. Just to give a little primer about what's in that quick hitter, just talking about, really we've had 2 referendums in the past to address our facilities in 2015, 2018, and in both of those, the intention is to update and enhance aging facilities. In both those instances, our community said, this isn't the right plan at the right time for the community of Jamestown. And so we've looked at exploring different options to really try to address the biggest concerns in the facility, our biggest priorities. Part of that is directly related to the capital projects plan. That was a facility planning 10-year plan that the district consulted to have completed in 2016 that outlined $2.16 million in projects per year over that 10-year span, and it goes across 7 different schedules. So that's ranges asbestos abatement, building repairs, sites, roofs, ADA remodeling, security and safety, and equipment. So 60% of that, 1.3 million, directly relates to building repairs, and an additional 560,000 relates to roofing, and those are annual. So we're really looking at a significant portion, 86%, of that capital project plan relates just to those two areas, building repairs and roofs. So our existing levy, what we levy now, so if we look at that, 1.3 million in building repairs, 560,000 in roofing expenses, but we generate $700,000 annually, so we cover about a third of that, $2.16 million annually that we need, and so we're short. So really what this referendum is about, and which is what this quick hitter tries to quickly explain, is that we can cover about a third of those costs, and we have some pretty big priority projects that are happening, or that we need to have happen to address. And again, most of that is in building repairs and roofs. And so I think a fair question is to say, well, what are you doing already? If you have this 2.16 million, what are you doing already? Well, we generate 700,000, and annually we've been spending about 820,000. So we're spending more than what we're bringing in already, and that comes from our building fund, and that's simply not a sustainable model. The referendum is about giving us some help as a school district to clip that peak, address the priority projects, and they are big projects. We know that we're putting in a boiler system at Roosevelt now. We need to do the same thing at Lincoln. We need to do the same thing at Gustner Elementary. And so there are big projects that simply are greater than what we can do with what we have. And so the impact for this would be great for the district. It'd be a high impact for the district because we could clip the peak. We could prioritize those big, heavy projects that are simply too big to do with what we currently have, at least without kicking the can down the road and waiting on other projects. So that additional 10 mils on a $100,000 home would be $45 annually on that $100,000 home, $3.75 per month for that expense. And again, I think the important thing, especially for the public to understand, is this is to provide levy authority. So that does not mean it is a 10 mil increase. It means it gives the board the authority to levy that additional 10 mils up to 20. And that's all governed by North Dakota Century Code in the building fund disposition. So I think it's important that we recognize that we have big projects, and the district would likely be levying that maximum, that 20 mils, until these projects are completed. And I think I think that's realistic to say that's likely the board's intention. But every year the board would have to decide, how many mills do we want to levy? Do we want to levy 10? Do we want to levy 20? Just like you have that authority now, it's 10, but you could decide to do 8. You could decide, but your ceiling is 10. And really what you're asking of the public is to say, we want that ceiling to be 20 to address these projects and assess your need over time. Every year in our summer projects planning, you would say, this is what we're approving. And in October, when you approve that budget, you would say, well, if we're going to do these expenses, it's going to be 20 mils, it's going to be 18 mils, it's going to be 17 mils, whatever it is. But the intention of this document is to quickly help people understand you're giving authority. You're giving levy authority to do it. It isn't a guaranteed additional 10 mils. But the maximum impact of that would be that $45 annually on a $100,000 home, or $3.75 a month. So with that, I'd stand for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Leck. Any comments or questions? Jason?
If the public would like to, I just see, this is great, this is a great document. If somebody wanted to educate themselves further, let's say, on what exactly this money would be going for, is that capital projects plan available? Is there a place we could send folks, just to give maybe a little more detail on that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to anybody that has questions about, the projects that are in there. The difficult thing, while it does, the capital projects plan outlines over 10 years what all those costs are. Some of that is, you could project 5 years from now that we're going to replace the windows in the middle school, but the roof at Louis L'Amour becomes the bigger issue, and that gets prioritized. So some of that is flexible. The idea is that over 10 years, you have these projects that need to get completed, understanding that there's flexibility necessary. And so, but yeah, I'd absolutely be happy to talk to anybody about those plans if they have questions about the types of projects beyond the 7 schedules that we have. Really we try to provide that as a 10,000-foot view, because that's generally what people want to understand. They want to understand building repairs, which includes window replacements, HVAC, boiler replacements. That's generally what people want to know. They don't want to know in year 5, the windows are going to be replaced at Lincoln.
Anything else? Bob?
Yeah, I hate to bring up a sore subject, but the last referendum, the football field was obviously a major hurdle to cross. The athletic complex, I'm sorry. In my frame of reference, it was always the darn football field, and not necessarily darn when people talk to me. But anyway, I just try and reassure people that that is not a part of this plan. And maybe then, whereas we can use it for the facilities that we need, that's not in the plans at this time. And I think people need to be reassured of that, if that's the right word. Sure. The athletic complex is not, this isn't enough to do everything that we wanted to do with the last project.
No, it is, this is a piece of the solution, not the whole solution. And really what an expansion of the building fund allows is for the district to tackle the capital projects plan. And that's really what the intention is at this time, is to address those big priorities across those 7 schedules. So that's really the focus of, how that would be utilized. And again, this is a building fund. This is to enhance the building fund, so you are governed by the use of the building fund. There's pretty clear North Dakota Century Code related to how the building fund can be utilized. And for anybody that's looking, that's 57-15-17, if you want to look at the disposition of the building fund tax.
Anything else? Okay, moving on to number 3, curriculum assessment and instruction, the state assessment report from Mrs. Clemens.
Good evening. Is this on? I think it is. Anyway, it's just hard. It's amazing for me to realize that I'm standing up here and it's back to school, and before I know it, it's going to be back to testing time, and these things just kind of keep rolling out at us. So I will share with you a few fun facts. I know that a draft of this was put into the board folder. I've expanded that a little bit, and I will make that available to you afterwards. I felt that what I gave you was so bare bones. It's really hard to talk about state assessment in a really meaningful way. It's something that we're mandated to do, and it does serve a purpose, but I think sometimes we feel that this is such a big, it's like one day, you take the test, and these are your results, and you're judged on that one day, one shot. That being said, the process actually has gotten better. I've been coordinating this endeavor for 6 or 7 years now, and the test has changed several times. This is the first year we actually had results almost immediately. So, we always talk, when we talk about feedback, that immediate feedback is much more meaningful, and this year we did have that going for us. So it made it a little bit more meaningful. You had a sheet that basically gave you the 2018-2019 results for English language arts and mathematics. And this is a completely online assessment, and it is criterion referenced. In the past, the test had been more, it had been a kind of test that it would adapt itself. It was a computer adaptive test. And so if students started doing really well, the questions got harder, and if they were struggling, it kind of tailored it to that. This was not that kind of test. This was just a straight, everybody pretty much got the same test, the same questions, and then they were compared to themselves rather than everybody else. So you have that, I don't know if you have it immediately in front of you or if you've had a chance to look, but you can see that we have a number of most of our schools ran around mid 40s to into the 50s and 60s for total proficient. District overall, we came in at 59% in ELA, which compared to 46% at the state level. In math, again, we had some variability, but anywhere from 45 to actually into the 70s. And again, Jamestown overall, 49%. We compared quite favorably or ahead of the state, where it was 42% proficiency. So we can feel okay about that, but anytime we get assessment reports, we look at it and we go, oh man, we can do better than that. The problem with this test is it gets really hard to compare, and like I said, it's once a year, so there's a lot of variabilities. The kids that we tested this year aren't necessarily the kids that we tested last year. I did go in and dig a little bit deeper. I went back and looked at the 17-18 results, just because as I'm looking at these, I'm thinking, well, I'm curious, this is where we are. And overall, I'll send you that amended, our results in pretty much every school, every grade level, and overall, we showed growth from the year before, which is obviously what you want. Some gains were higher than others, but again, we saw growth. But it's a year at a time. We do a lot of other assessments in the district, as I'm sure you are aware, and for the most part, we find that more meaningful. One of the things Dr. Leck talked about when we, in relationship to the PLCs, we're looking at, okay, what do we want them to know? How do we know? And that, of course, is all kinds of formative and summative assessments that really give us more meat for those day-to-day operations. But again, we do have to take this into consideration and look at it and kind of see the big picture. One of the problems that has happened, and it's going to happen again this year, is they keep changing it. So even the test that we gave last year isn't the same test that we gave this year. So it kind of gets a little bit difficult to compare results. This year, typically science, and this report is not typically included that in the revised version, does have a little bit of science. That's been a paper pencil exam, and that's been done in the fall, totally separate, kind of a whole different animal, and just 4th, 8th, and 11th graders have taken that. Just for the record, our results this year ranged from 74% proficient at 4th grade, 74% at 8th grade, and 70% for 11th grade. So, I mean, that's wonderful that we have those kind of numbers. But this coming year, science is moving to computer-based, and it's going to be done in the spring instead of the fall with everything else, and I'm assuming it's going to be a different vendor, and it's going to be a different test, and I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty apprehensive about that, but it will be what it will be, and hopefully, like I said, the good thing this year was we got some more immediate results. Hopefully that continues to be the case, and we can use this information to the degree that is possible to help inform instruction. And if nothing else, it really does. One of the things that our different grade level groupings and meetings have focused on is looking at pacing guides and looking at what should be taught and when and in what sequence. It isn't the way the particular textbook presents it maybe isn't necessarily the best way to present that. And one thing we've learned in the state testing is the fourth grade teachers have been panic stricken when the state assessment came out and it's assessing skills that haven't come up yet, and they haven't really taught those, and so we have used some of that to tailor some of the decisions that we've made as, okay, what's the more logical way to approach teaching and hopefully learning, so that assessment shows that we're doing better and actually learning what's being taught. So those are some takeaways, I guess. I don't know, that's kind of it in a nutshell. It's a lot of numbers. It's, like I said, it is meaningful to a certain degree, but we try not to put, you don't ever want to put all your eggs in one basket. So this is just one test on one day, and we try to do a lot. And I know some of you are on the District School Improvement Committee. I don't know if everybody has access to that Google Drive or not, but we do data reviews at least twice a year, and with several other assessments that we do that are more frequent and progress monitored. That information is available in that drive, and I thought about pulling some of that over, but I guess I don't always know how much information is too much information. But if you are interested in that, I would certainly think that we could get you access so that you could see some of the other results that we're getting and read a little bit about how we use that to inform instruction. But if you have any questions or
Thank you, Mrs. Clemens. Are there any questions or comments? Heidi?
Yeah, thank you for your report, and this is good information for the board. And I think you make a good point that this isn't the only test we focus on, and every day we're assessing, our PLCs. We're spending a lot of time really focusing on student learning and improving ways in which we can move the bar and with students. And so I appreciate your time also on all the other committees throughout the year as well. And like I said, this is just one small piece of what we do to assess students, but it's a piece that we should look at. So thank you.
Well, and this is the one that's kind of the ultimate. It's the state assessment. So it's the one that if there's results published, if you hear about how schools are doing, this is pretty much the measure that you're hearing about. So.
Dr. Leck?
Just a few comments, and I'm glad that Mrs. Clemens started with this, with the statement about the assessments, and it's been reiterated already too. And we've told teachers before, and teachers tell our students, you're more than a score, right? And this is an important piece, but that's what it is. And if we take any single piece out of context, we don't see the whole solution. And, for me, when I look at assessment results, I kind of gravitate towards how do you compare to your peers? Because our standards are fluid. They're a moving target over time, right? We expect fourth graders now learn more than I learned when I was a fourth grader, and they learn more than others when they were fourth graders. Our kids now are experienced and expected to know more than their parents were. And so that's always a moving target. And so if you get fixated on percentages, that's a zero-sum game. We'll always be chasing something better, right? And so that's what I'm saying when you take those things out of context. We try to simplify it too much, and we miss the big picture. But I do look at how do we compare to peers, and I think we do very well. If you look at other students tested, assessed on this, we compare very favorably to the average in North Dakota, and that's something that I think does tell us something, more so than other numbers tell us. Earlier today in this meeting and in other conversations, we've gone even more in depth as Heidi's talked about with other things that our teachers do to support and engage learners. And those are just as important. They aren't represented in a score on a report, but they have just as much, if not more, much more to do with learning than assessments do. And I just don't want us to lose the context of how important the other side, summative tests are important. They give us a nice benchmark, a nice target. They give us a nice quick look. But there's a lot of other things that go into this process, and I just want to reaffirm, what others have said there, that we certainly look at a lot more than just this, and our teachers do a lot more work, a lot more wide-ranging work than just focusing on the state assessment, although it is important.
It is. And I don't know if I said this at the beginning, the updated version, it does have some additional scores. One thing that I did do is I went in, because again, you try to look at students, have these particular students grown? So the last column, the 17-18 results are going to show, I went back and the fourth graders, I was able to go in and look at third grade scores last year, so I could see, this particular group scored 43% last year, and this year they're at 48%, so they've shown growth. So just know that I did, even though it says fourth on the column, this is actually the same students.
Cohort group.
The year before, with the exception of 10th grade, because we don't test them in 9th grade, so I couldn't do it there. But I gave the last year's 9th grade, or last year's 10th grade score, so.
Great.
All right.
Well, thank you. All right, moving on then to letter B. Can I have a motion for the approval of the CDDLC agreement? Motion by Bob. Second by Steve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to finance. Can I have a motion to approve the 2019-20 school lunch price for adult? Motion by Greg. Second by Melissa. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And moving on to letter B, the general fund balance. Sally, anything there?
That's just for your, excuse me, for your reference. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Moving on to letter C, can I have a motion to approve the monthly financials? Motion by Melissa. Second by Roger. All those or any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have nothing under personnel or number 6, policy and procedures. Moving on to number 7, tuition. I have a motion to approve the tuition agreement for a 12th grade Pingree Buchanan student to attend Jamestown Public School for the 2019-2020 school year. Motion by Roger. Second by Jason. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Letter B, approval of a tuition agreement for a 7th grade Gackle student to attend Jamestown Public School for the 2019-2020 school year. Motion by Rogers, second by Diane. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Letter C, the approval of a tuition agreement for a kindergarten and 1st grade Jamestown student to attend Montpelier Public School for the 2019-2020 school year. Melissa's and second. Jason, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And letter D, the approval of a tuition agreement for a kindergarten, 1st grade, 4th grade, and 9th grade Jamestown students to attend the Montpelier Public School for the 2019-2020 school year. Motion by Melissa, second by Greg. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have nothing in the other. Are there any items for future agendas? If you come up with anything, please feel free to let myself or Dr. Leck know so that we can add it. Then we have the meetings to be scheduled. We have the staff breakfast on Wednesday, August 21st at 7:30 at the high school commons. If you're able to help serve, that would be greatly appreciated. Then the next administrator negotiating meeting will be on Wednesday, August 28th at 5 p.m. in the district office conference room. And we have the UJ Block Party booth, which please let Dr. Leck's office know if you are able and willing to help man that booth and answer questions about the upcoming referendum, which will be held August 28th, and it's from 5 until 8. August 28th. And then we have our next school board meeting, which will be on Tuesday, September 3rd at 5:15 here in the Thompson Community Room. So please make sure you're here Tuesday, not Monday. Then we have a JEA negotiation meeting for Tuesday, September 17th at 5 p.m. here in the Thompson Community Room. We have the referendum election here in the Thompson Community Room on September 24th, and that'll be available from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then we'll also have the election canvassing board meeting on September 30th at 5:15 in the multipurpose room at the middle school. Any other meetings to add to this list? Yes.
When is our next negotiation for administration?
That is August 28th. Is that correct? That date?
Is that the same date as the block party?
Oh, I suppose it is.
Okay.
Okay. So 3 of us will be tied up. So if we could have some other help, or maybe we could. And you. So we may need to adjust that. So committee will have to visit. Yes, thank you. Any other meetings? Okay. Do we want to do executive session? Bob?
I, Bob Toso, believe that discussion with our negotiators in developing a strategy relative to the school board's position in this matter in open session would have an adverse fiscal effect on the negotiations position of the board. Therefore, I move that the board enter into executive session, that the following members and negotiators be identified as being present. School board members Greg Allen, Melissa Gleason, Diane Hanson, Roger Hout, Heidi Larson, Jason Rohr, Jennifer Schmidt, Robert Toso, Steve Veldkamp, Superintendent Robert Leck, and Business Manager Sally Ost. That the date and time are August 19th at 6:35. That only the following topic will be considered in executive session: negotiation strategy. That the legal authority for the executive session is section 44-04-19.1 of the North Dakota Century Code, and that the executive session be recorded.
I'll second.
Roger seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So we will go into executive session, and then we will return here when we are finished with that to close the meeting. Thank you.